civilizations to also extend making these types of vessels from the hardest forms of natural igneous rock. Things like granite, diorite, schist, quartz, porphyry, basalt, or even corundum, amongst others. These materials rank as 6, 7, 8, and even 9 on the Mohs scale of hardness, which is harder than iron or even steel. The Mohs scale tops out at 10 with diamond, which is the hardest substance known. So what specifically makes these jars and vases so remarkable? There are two key challenges involved in their manufacture. First of all is carving the material itself, which requires a substance harder than that which is being carved. There is no evidence of diamond use in ancient Egypt, although a substance like it must have been utilized, as many of these bear specific striations and tooling marks of something carving the stone and not simply grinding at it with abrasive powders. The fact that grinding was not the technique used is demonstrated by the observable striations and tool marks that still exist on many of these fragments, as many of these bear specific striations and tooling marks of something carving the stone and not simply grinding at it with abrasive powders.
Is this carving or cutting the chicken? Here we see someone who is carving stone with a cutting disc that grinds into the material. Even with diamond and our most powerful machines, there is no tool that can carve into granite the way you would carve into wood. Carving, cutting, these are all broad terms. Now I can cut something away by grinding at it, or I can cut into wood by carving at it. So this is important, but he's poisoned the well and he's set up. First he's assumed, well, it was carved, and therefore we go into these other parts. But just as with Mohs hardness scale, lost high technologists don't even understand the basics. Well, they do, but they use this to pollute people's minds. Discs like this are embedded with abrasive powders, usually diamond, to cut or carve the stone by grinding at it. So this mention of it was carved and it was not grinding, again, it's all fluff, it's just silly.
First of all is carving the material itself, which requires a substance harder than that which is being carved.
Diamond was carved to make a ring by grinding, using tools embedded with abrasive diamond powder. Like cuts like. You do not need a harder material. Mohs hardness scale is not a difficult concept to come across. It's basically a scale of what will grind what. It's not about carving, it's not about cutting. The most important application would be pretty much put down to grinding.
First of all is carving the material itself, which requires a substance harder than that which is being carved.
Now think about that. That does not make sense.
Okay, so again, lost high technologists, they have an obsession with diamond and Mohs hardness scale, which is only one form of hardness, basically has to do with scratching. Now, if they were correct and diamond is the hardest, then what do they use? And you need a material harder, then what do they use to shape diamonds with? They used to use steel chisels, they still do, to fracture it and splinter it, but how do you polish? How do you grind down diamond? You use diamond dust. Like cuts like. You do not need a harder mineral or a material to work another. It's just silly. If that was true, then you wouldn't be able to rub two stones together and grind them down or carve them by rubbing them together. It really is silly. When you think about Mohs scale, don't think about hammers and carving. Think about sandpaper. Sandpaper, it cuts, it carves, it grinds, it abrades. People who use sandpaper use the term cutting, right? But it grinds down as well, and it can be used to carve. Mohs hardness scale is relevant for grinding or abrasion. Terms such as cutting or carving are broad terms, and they don't really have much specific meaning, just like hardness, because there are many forms of hardness, and Mohs scale is just but one form of hardness, and it's basically, it describes what mineral scratches another mineral. So that's why it's relevant to sandpaper. You're not going to get a talcum powder sandpaper and try and polish diamond. You get a silicon carbide or a aluminium oxide corundum or a diamond sandpaper, and then it's going to work basically over everything. And the scale of 1 to 10 on Mohs scale is a relative term. It's just a ranking. If one thing scratches another, it's higher on the scale, and diamond tops the scale at 10. But diamond is also incredibly fragile. You can smash and crush diamond with a steel hammer. You can drop a diamond on the floor and it can shatter. So again, this obsession with diamond technology and this type of stuff, and diamond, well, it's not quite how it works. It's diamond is very hard on one plane, but if it doesn't fall at precisely the right plane, it's going to break, it's going to fracture, it's going to shatter.
As many of these bear specific striations and tooling marks of something carving the stone and not simply grinding at it with abrasive powders. The fact that grinding was not the technique used is demonstrated by the observable striations and tool marks that still exist on many of these fragments. As many of these bear specific striations and tooling marks of something carving the stone and not simply grinding at it with abrasive powders. The fact that grinding was not the technique used is demonstrated by the observable striations and tool marks that still exist on many of these fragments.
There we see the grooves achieved by free abrasive. That's probably the only way to do it. You see some in grey granite, smaller core, same marks, partially drilled core. Again, you can see the same marks. That's another, anyway, I won't go into that for now because that's another little thing. But now this core, well, it does have those marks, but they're not as deep because I used a finer abrasive. So all those marks that you see in the core holes, which are the same striations that are inside the vases, are created by free abrasive, and they can be done very easily, very cheaply, with some experimentation. It's simply not an issue, and it's simply untrue to say that the fact is it cannot be done with abrasive powder. No, the fact is it can't be done without abrasive powders, because there are no tools powerful enough to like fix point and grind into granite. These are just one of the really silly points that come up, and they know it's true, and it's been proven. They've known for quite some time before they went on their recent tours to Egypt, pointing at stone and saying it can't be done. It has been done, and they know how, and they're charging people good money and telling fibs that they know to be untrue.
The fact that grinding was not the technique used is demonstrated by the observable striations and tool marks that still exist on many of these fragments.
Now, let's get precise about one other thing, okay? We'll get precise about one other thing. Now,
Precise?
Yeah, precise.
More impressive, however, is the precision with which they've been formed, and the technological implications behind this precision, as well as those of the tool marks themselves. Whatever was guiding the tools that carved these objects was a remarkable piece of technology. Many jars seem to be utterly symmetrical, perfect in their dimensions, like this piece, which is so finely balanced as to appear to stand upright on its tip, like an egg standing on its end. Others have been worked to a frankly ridiculous thinness of material, like this vase, broken in a section so that we can appreciate just how finely the very hard and brittle stone has been worked. Flinders Petrie described some vessels as being worked to, quote, an extraordinary thinness, no stouter than thin card, end quote.
Okay, so on the mechanical methods of the ancient Egyptians by William Matthew Flinders Petrie, Esquire, this is where the quote in regards to the vase, which has an insanely thin wall, no thinner than a stout card. Okay, so let's just look through that, because they love to show pictures of the quotes when Petrie mentions the fixed point machine and so forth, but it's very, very interesting that these quotes are not shown directly, because let's begin. A small, highly polished, narrow-necked vase in diorite, or rather in transparent quartz with veins of hornblende, has its neck only 0.05 inches thick. It's about 1¼ millimetre. All right, so there is no object number provided. There are several types of vases that have narrow necks, but only the neck itself is thinned to 0.05 inches, not the body, just the neck. But what is a narrow-necked vase? This is an important point. I'll come to that at the end, because what is a vase, what is a jar, what is a bowl? Now, these could be described as a narrow-necked vase. So the one on the right, that neck is that the section that's only 1¼ millimetre thick. Which exact vase is it? There are several that fit that description. Petrie doesn't tell us in this case, but so if these things are to be replicated, if we're talking precision, let's get precise. What precisely is it that has to be replicated with primitive technology? Apparently Ben says that it cannot be done, and dares people to make experiments. When you do an experiment and provide it, then he doesn't show it and he hides it and won't let people discuss it. In my comments, I'm constantly challenged about this. It's precision, it's precise, but I ask, okay, what item number is it? What is the exact precision of it? Provide the details. No one ever does. It just shuts down the conversations, or they go into whataboutisms. But do the lost ancient high technologists even know what they're talking about? They're just cherry-picking quotes from Flinders Petrie, and either have not done their research or we'll see them. Okay, now the next section, a large vase of cyanite is turned inside and out, remarkably thin considering the size of the component crystals. Once again, there is no object number provided. What type of large vase design is it? This is a very vague term. Is it one such as these, where an arm or a tool, could easily be inserted and just with a matter of grinding it down, using just the ancient grinding techniques? So again, no object number provided. We just don't know. But here's the important one. Okay, so but the greatest triumph is a bowl of diorite. This is a quote that he mentions, but here's the whole quote. The greatest triumph is a bowl of diorite, number 4716, translucent and full of minute flaws, which must render it very brittle. Yet this bowl, 6 inches diameter, is only 1/40th or 0.024 of an inch thick over its greatest part. Just around the edge it is thicker in order to strengthen it, but a small chip broken out of a body shows its extraordinary thinness, no stouter than a thin card. Ben, and always say it's a vase. Again, the clear implication is that the inside of these vases have this extraordinary thinness. The other one, it's impressive, but it's not very impressive, and I'll show you another example. But Petrie does give a reference number 4716. He mentions the British Museum, EA 4716. The greatest triumph is a thin-walled bowl. This is a diorite bowl, or a plate. Now I try to find an image of 4716, and there you can see, especially on the right-hand side, a bowl. And again, what is exactly a vase? What is exactly a bowl? There was no specific image on there, but if we're talking about a bowl, so here's an idea. You take a bowl. You can use a ceramic bowl to do this. It has the same Mohs hardness of diorite at 7. Take a piece of sandpaper or sandstone, just put some sand in there and a cloth or a piece of leather or a piece of wood, and just rub against it until the surface is as thin as a piece of stout card. If you find this impossible without advanced diamond machining, then I can teach you on a live stream how to do very simple work that requires no skill at all. This is not a vase, it's a bowl. All right, now next, an alabaster vase of Unas of the 5th dynasty that rivals this in thinness, being only 1/20th to 1/30th of an inch thick, but the softness of the material makes it of far less interest. That's not strictly correct, because because it's softer, in essence, it's easier to work, just means it takes longer. Doesn't really add it. It just means it takes longer. That's just abrasive grinding away. The same principle works with modern machine tools today. If it's, what's softer is easier to do, and a stone that is harder, and again, harder is a vague term, but it's just added time. It's not any extra special skill level or involved, just time. Here are two alabaster vases inscribed with the name of Unas. There's another. Now, that one on the left, let's look at that from different angles. We can see this is in the Brooklyn Museum. We see it's very thin there on the walls. A description wasn't made, but this is a vase of alabaster with Unas's name on it. Now, it's just a matter of just putting some sand in there and just rubbing away at it to get that thinness. It's not remarkable at all. But now, here's the question, because what is a vase? Now, let's do the dictionary thing. A vase, decorative container without handles. Some vases have handles, but then people would call it a jug. But important, typically made of glass or china or used as an ornament for displaying cut flowers. That's what people think of as a vase. We have a typical shape. That would match the shape of if you were to show that to someone, what is it? That's a vase, okay. Vase, Middle English, from French, from Latin, was vas or vessel. Important point, the 40,000 stone vases found in Saqqara were not vases, they were vessels. Vessel is it's basically container, a bowl, a plate could be considered a vessel. And so this is a tricky word when they use vase. Now, Brooklyn Museum describes this as an ointment jar. Again, pardon the typo there. It's an ointment jar. That's how they describe it. But then we see something like this described as a vase in other collections. And here's a problem. What is a jar? What is a vase? It's a very, very, very vague term. So, if it's about precision, let's get precise. If these things, must be replicated by the experimentalists, those nasty experiment, then you're talking precision. Let's get precise. What precisely is it that has to be replicated? Because if we go back to the thinness thicker than a stout card, then that's a bowl. It's not a vase. Let's be precise.
Now, let's get precise about one other thing, okay? We'll get precise about one other thing.
Precise.
Yeah, precise.
And yet still maintaining the same degree of symmetry and precision in manufacture. This isn't a simple task, as along with being very hard, these types of stones are also brittle when carved, and many are formed from conglomerate stones, which are made up of crystals and...
Okay, so here are some pictures from Jean Phillipe Lauer. He led the dig, 1920s, found 40,000 stone vessels, containers, broad term, not vases buried beneath the step pyramid of Jose. Now you hear this often, precision stone vases. Well, there's a myriad of shapes and styles here, some with handles, some without handles, and they have a dead set giveaway. Now, here are some other examples. Now, what's important, again, it's the insane thinness of these walls. Well, again, you take note of these pictures and you see that they're actually quite thick in a lot of places. Now, for instance, this one. So that thinness is a rarity. Okay, but the important point, so even for museum display pieces, and we'll compare them to those that he shows, they display an obvious asymmetry and a lack of what anyone would define as precision. They can be seen in many, if not most, of the vessels from beneath the step pyramid and elsewhere. Now, notice there on the top, there is an obvious asymmetry, a lack of precision. Now, even the shape. Now, perhaps this one was designed to be like an egg. So, okay, at least the lip, the opening there is not precise, but if it was egg-shaped, okay, maybe that was great. They did an egg-shaped one, and it's an egg lying on its side, not lying on its tip like the other one. All right, now, notice the one in the middle. So we take and we swap it over. Now, what should happen is that those lines should follow each other and be equidistant throughout. This is asymmetrical. Its profile doesn't match, and same with the one on the right. I'm not even going to go to the F. Now, you just look at these pictures carefully, and you can see obvious and repeated asymmetry. But let's do a zoom in of there on the top. notice on the left, so between the neck or the lip down to the handles, there is, again, obvious. Look, you do not need micrometers to measure this. Now, also notice at the holes, you can see that these holes are asymmetrical. They haven't been lined up. They're not precision. Even their location, they're not symmetrical. This is a method we can test with the ones that it will show. The same thing here. We see that, again, notice between the lip, the top, and where the handles are, there's a asymmetry. Now, but at the very least, the holes are asymmetrical. They're way off. This is a repeated feature, including in the ones that Ben's going to show you as his museum-grade examples. The other ones are crude, and but so this is just one simple method. Like they'll always say, "Oh, we need a precision. Engineers must descend on this and they must measure it." No, you must pay a little bit of attention and know what symmetry and precision even means. Here are some other, like Saqqara. Now this one's obviously asymmetrical and wonky. Of the 40,000, is there been a study done? I don't know. But the ones that are really good always get shown in the pictures. The ones that are really bad are not shown in the pictures. But even the ones that are really good have obvious asymmetry. And again, this meme is carried around that the hard rocks as diorite, gneiss and granite, reasonable to think they require tooling such as diamond drills. So, no, absolutely not. This is just ridiculous. Like cuts like. Just this diamond technology stuff. But again, notice the one on the right. Now you can look at the profile, obvious asymmetry, but again, just the holes that are drilled into the handles are asymmetrical, just obvious giveaway. There are some undoubtedly exceptional pieces, but even amongst those, if you just pay a little bit of attention, you'll see that they are asymmetrical and imprecise.
And yet still maintaining the same degree of symmetry and precision in manufacture. This isn't a simple task, as along with being very hard, these types of stones are also brittle when carved, and many are formed from conglomerate stones, which are made up of crystals and other materials. The tools carving them would have had to pass through very hard areas into softer stone as it worked the material, and done so without cracking or shattering the piece, which only gets more difficult as the material thins out. This bowl, discovered by Jean Phillipe Lauer in the treasure hoards beneath the step pyramid, has been turned so well in crystalline stone as to be translucent, an extraordinary feat of ancient advancement.
First things first, alabaster, translucent form of gypsum or calcite. There is nothing remarkable about the translucency of these materials. That is their nature. Even when they're quite thick, they are translucent. Just before the recent lockdown come over Sydney about a month ago, I started experimenting making stone vessels. I've got some very interesting ideas how to use Egyptian tools and materials to do this and speed up the process significantly. Olga from Scientists Against Myth is doing this, but she's using the most primitive of primitive tools. She's not even using copper, but the concept is very simple. A tube in a tube in a tube. And I'm making a vessel at the moment, but exactly the same method, where we can even see pictures from Rekmire's tomb, where they're making those exact same stone vessels using these types of drills is being used. And this same drill goes back to Saqqara, where the 40,000 stone vessels were made. It's a very simple concept. The example you see, I'm in pentelic marble, which is harder than alabaster calcite, which it's also translucent, not as translucent. So I put up the challenge now. We can do a live stream and we can do the bulk of the work in only a few hours. So here I put out the challenge. Science Against Myths and myself have done many experiments in granite that are demanded by Uncharted X and the Lost High Technology community. They only censor them and put them to the shelf, so I'm putting up the challenge. Anyone who's a defender, who wants to defend this position, we can do this in a live stream, including the so-called master masons with decades of experience who say that our claims are ridiculous, but they don't want to look at the experiments. So for all of the shill channels and all of the believer channels, the time has come. We can do this and we can make this without advanced machines. So this is one example that can be done in a very, very short time. Now you say, Well, the interior, it's undercut and it's like flared inwards. Well, I would point to the top right corner. As I drill down, I don't want to just drill a cylinder straight down. I want to begin hollowing out the stone vessel as I'm drilling down. Top right corner. Very simple technique. You split the tube up and it starts to flare out. As it gets pushed down, it gets spread out and it actually begins hollowing out the tube. It doesn't cut straight down. Just reverse that. We put that on the inside and we can do this undercutting in the center. It will require some hand polishing and some delicate work afterwards. But open challenge right here. Anyone who, rather than do it and just have it ignored, anyone who wants to defend it, but especially Brian Foster, Bright Insight, NEXT, Johanna James, Uncharted X, any of you, take your claims and let's do live streams of these and do these in real time to show how quickly this work can be done. Open challenge. And again, and if they don't want to reply, which they won't, because they're running, they know that they're wrong. Christopher Dunn as well. You're frauds, you're scams, and you're not scammers. You're not the least bit interested in truth. The challenge goes out. Let's do this. What you call advanced precision, advanced machining is basic freaking handwork. Challenge is out there. I won't hold my breath because I know what you are. You know, and that's becoming more and more apparent to more and more people.
Machining. Other pieces are fully hollowed out with long necks and narrow, undercut, flared openings. The tools that were used to carve these had to work the insides of these jars just as precisely and delicately as the outsides. I'm not sure if we've ever replicated such pieces in material like schist or porphyry, but I'd imagine it would be a most difficult task, even with our modern technology and machines. To achieve such characteristics, the symmetry and exactness in extremely difficult material like this, with primitive and simple hand tools like the ones found in the archaeological record,
It's impossible. Okay, challenge accepted. Using copper, we can even just get copper sheets and wrap them around a dowel to make copper tubes. A tube in a tube with a copper bar at the center using the ancient Egyptian flywheel drill. Here's an experiment that I did. I drilled this as one single piece. It is utterly perfectly symmetrical. That's just the nature of rotation. And we can also do the decorative pieces. So that little piece that he calls impossible there in the center, we drill from the top, flip the block over, we drill down from the other side, and we'll have the blank ready in no more than 4 hours, and then hollowing it out would be a different story. But a tube in a tube using the Egyptian materials, using the actual Egyptian tool, the flywheel drill, what he calls impossible. Again, I open the challenge to any Lost High Technology channel to do a live stream in regards to this. Not a debate about, sources. Let's just get the friggin' thing done. Challenge out there. Again, won't hold my breath on this because it's an interest. They're not the least bit interested in truth. If they would take the challenge.
It's frankly impossible. Despite many experimentalists carving rough stone vessels by hand and then declaring victory, replicating these specific characteristics in stone with simple hand tools has never been demonstrated. The only explanation we are left with is that mechanical assistance and power tools that were capable of a very high degree of precision, much like our computer-guided tools of today, must have been involved in their manufacture. This claim is further backed up by the tool marks left on many of these jars and vases, which undeniably show that powerful, lathe-like machinery was involved in the process. This isn't a new discovery, although it's a claim that has remained controversial for more than 100 years. The great pioneering Egyptologist Flinders Petrie was the first to truly analyze the mechanical methods involved in the creation of such objects. The fact that grinding was not the technique used is demonstrated by the observable striations and tool marks that still exist on many of these fragments.
Earlier he stated these marks cannot be done by free abrasive powders, therefore they must be advanced machine lathe, some sort of diamond possibly tool. August 29th, 2019, Science Against Myth posted this video. Before that, they'd also which were linked in the description, they posted a paper in regards to this, quite explicit. I showed you earlier, these types of tool marks are the evidence of abrasive powders. Ben says it cannot be done. Again, he uses these terms, impossible, therefore it cannot be done. Well, it can be done. It has been demonstrated multiple times. I took the time to replicate these experiments multiple times, and I found exactly the same results. Science, repeated multiple independent experiments arriving at the same conclusion. Uncharted X bans these links to these comments. He never discusses them. You notice in his video he says experimentalists have done this, but he only shows the ancient Dennis Stocks experiment, but he will not. He refuses. These are just blocked. It's censored. This was released before his 2020 tour of Egypt. I done my experiments before his 2020 tour of Egypt. I even went out of the way to take screenshots of the behaviour that they are censoring this. So in the comments you won't find it, you won't see it linked in his description. He won't discuss it in the videos where the truth has been revealed about this. Multiple independent tests, you can test it for yourself. It's very cheap, very easy and very quick to do on top of that. He knew that this was untrue at the time, having taken money from these people. And in 2021, he's still repeating these claims. He is a con man. He is a fraud. He knows he cannot claim ignorance. He knows full well what has been done, and he still keeps frauding people. And that's why he's running, because he is a liar and a coward. And I dare any of him or his crew that we can do live stream and explain to your audience how this is done. You can do it on your side, I'll do it on my side. It costs less than a few cups of coffee to do. It takes less time than what you will do spending editing your videos. You have no excuse not to accept this challenge, unless to acknowledge the fact that you are a fraud, a liar, and a coward. And the challenge has been made. So I know Yusuf Ayawan and Brian Foster and Ben and Annie. They will not. They've built their house of cards, and they cannot afford to do this. So for anyone who's a defender of these and wants to defend this position, for any so-called master mason with decades of experience who calls me a armchair mason, I've offered the challenge to people, and all of a sudden they go quiet. They shut the hell up because because they've got nothing. All right, so let this amateur armchair mason from the suburbs for a few dollars do these experiments in real time, and you can judge them. I'll send you the blanks. You'll be able to make your own. So I don't need to send you my samples. You can make your own, and they can be tested. So you're frauds, you're cowards, and you're liars. And the challenge is out there. This is not about sources and links and quoting Petrie, but not quoting Lucas, because Alfred Lucas, often referred to as the Sherlock Holmes of Egypt, was completely correct, and Petrie was completely wrong. Same with Petrie's description of the helical spirals on core 7. Completely wrong. This has been proven. So challenge goes out there. Not holding my breath, because you're out there shilling, you're stealing people's money to tell lies and frauds and to sell this. So let's, if you I'll play nice, I'll be nice, I'll be a gentleman. If you're a gentleman, and we'll just do the experiment and put it on there, and then we can build up to more difficult things. But let's start small. I'll teach you how to do it. I'll teach you. I'm your teacher. That's what I do. I teach. I experiment and I teach. And then I do. And I don't need to lie. I don't need to exaggerate. I don't need to use fluffy language. I do. Do you accept the challenge?
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God. Stop fucking lying.